Well, we're moving on to the next segment here. I had got all my chassis locations for the treble and bass volume control input such, and I plotted them out to scale, and then I basically put them on top of the chassis component and then drilled them out. A little straightforward. Did the same thing for the top. I think this drawing is mislabeled. This one over here is the power transformer. This is an output transformer, and then I've got my 9-pin socket, two 8-pin sockets here, and then my can cap is over here. Same sort of thing. I just put it on top of it and taped it on there real quick, and then prick punched it across, and then I can drill my holes. And once I get the transformers in here, I'll do the cutout. This is a base mount one. This is a standard mount, and I got the same thing, just kind of going through on the back side here for my IEC connector for my 110 voltage, and my mains fuse, which I labeled as F1, and then I've got my output, which is going to be going to a jack that I can plug into a speaker cabinet. So that's pretty much what it looks like there. Pretty straightforward. Then I'll go through and I'll get the appropriate sizes, which I've got written down somewhere as to where all the diameters of the holes are. So got all the turrets in the blackboard. Kind of see them in there. They actually look kind of straight. And then I'll couple this with a drawing I made, which is pretty close to the layout. If you kind of look at the underside of this chassis here, I've got my 9-pin here and my two 8-pins here and here, and that corresponds to what's going on in here. Is my 9-pin V1A, V1B, the 12AX7. This is the V6 GC 9-pin, and then I've not in this drawing here, but I've actually got the rectifier. It's going to be sitting over here. So, and then the can cap is over there. So basically what I do is I kind of draw the blackboard out here and just put all the components that you'd have per the schematic. It's real straightforward stuff. And I'll lace them all in there, and I'll dress this board out pretty much as I can, tie as much in there, put some longer wires on it, and then I'll put my transformers in there in the chassis bottom, or chassis top, the other side of it, and then I'll find out where this board will fit relative left to right, front to back, to kind of see where it best fits and come up with a few standoffs to get it off the bottom there. And again, this is a pretty straightforward project. Again, it's a onesie, it's a one of a kind. I probably won't build another one of these. Okay, got the chassis out of paint. Let it dry for a couple days, let it harden a little bit. Got my output transformer, input transformer cap, my 8 pins and 9-pin socket, and got all my pots low front. I usually do a dry fit of this stuff before I paint, so I make sure I don't have any surprises after, which happens anyway, where I have to open a hole or move something around. But that's what the front of it looks like. I'll turn it around in the next segment. You can see the back. Not that it's really important. What it's going to end up doing is I'm going to build a cabinet with a 10-inch speaker. This thing's going to sit on top. A lot of times these this is a Champ, kind of the Tweed series. I think there's another couple in there that are these small amps. They typically put these chassis upside down inside it. I'm going to put it on top of it just because that's what I'm going to do. But I'm going to be putting a 10-inch speaker in here. I got a Jensen 4 ohm that I'm going to use and make the box out of MDF. Real simple stuff, real straightforward. I'm going to not spend a hell of a lot of time trying to get that perfect. This is an amp I'm building for me. So that's how it's looking so far. I'm going to turn it around and turn it upside down so you can see the other side of it. And so this is the back side of it right here. I got my IEC connector, my mains fuse, my output jack, which is going to go by way of cable to the speaker cabinet below. And this is what it looks like inside. Again, I just haven't, I think I pre-wired this 9-pin here a little bit. Everything else I'll do on the fly. I've got the blackboard built already for this one. I'll bring it over and show that. And that's all built up already according to the wiring diagram. Again, pretty straightforward thing. I'll mount this in here under some standoffs. I'm not exactly sure where it's going to go once I'll do my I'll do a little bar napkin sketch, so to speak, of how I'm going to route the AC in from my IC to my main power switch. It's the standby here. in the pilot light up here. So I'll kind of do a bar napkin sketch so I can channel to make sure I'm going to keep the AC from the DC and the high voltage from the low voltage, and I've got to pretty much do some thinking on this, how I'm going to route it, but for the most part that's kind of where I'm at. It's going to take a few days from here to think it through a little bit. Again, it's the first time I ever built anything quite like this, so generally I know how I want it to turn out. The other thing that's worth mentioning is that this particular model shows a on the original schematic, which I don't have here right now, I think I showed it in an earlier segment, showing a depth cap, and I don't intend to put that in there. There's pros and cons about putting safety caps in there. The drawback is you can make it safe by using a grounded IEC connector here, which you go to a chassis. That's what this little hole is for it here, for I get a nice positive ground, chassis ground to earth ground. You pick up a little hum sometimes. Sometimes I can filter that out. Sometimes it's just not worth it. Sometimes if you listen to these old amps, you see them in the repair shop videos and they turn them up and they just hum like all heck. And that's kind of accepted for what they were at the time. I'm not going to get real nuts about it. It's a 5-watt amp. I'm going to use it for a practice amp for myself. So anyway, next segment we'll take it a little further. Just a little quick update here. I started to build the speaker cabinet. Got a Jensen 10-inch speaker I'm going to stick in there. Kind of looks like that. So again, nothing special. Had some MDF laying around. Drew it up. I'm really not a good carpenter at all, and today I was not one with my router, that's for sure. But I intend to put a screen in here, so you won't see how bad this turned out. But that's pretty much it, and the amp is gonna sit on top. And I'll sand it all up, prime it, and paint it, whatever can of something other I've got laying on the shelf that'll work. Again, this is pretty much just for me, kind of a little practice amp, but that's what I did today. Got it all cut up, made a big old mess in my garage, spent more time cleaning up than I did building things, and wood is not my favorite subject. So well, let's see, I finished the speaker cabinet, put a little jack in the back, and marked it with what it is, 4 ohm, 20 watt, it's a Jensen 10-inch. Again, just made it out of MDF. Actually had some old handles laying around from something else. Got it painted with some speaker paint that I had laying around from another project. And put the 10-inch speaker in there, and then I made a cover. I had some had done a repair for a Fender chorus some time ago. The guy who used it's kind of a funny story. He was out playing, and that's how it turned out. But all right, in this short segment here, I've got the board in. It's funny, in the previous segment I had mounted in there, and I realized that I had mounted it 180 degrees wrong, so I had actually figured out how I was going to do the wire runs, and probably got busy building that speaker cabinet and forgot what I had thought about, so or I figured out. So what I've got to do now is I've just got to wire in my my volume pot, which is a 1 meg, and then a treble and bass. Pretty much that, and then I'll have to wire in my input jack over here. Everything else, for the most part, is completed. It's going fairly smooth. I really can't get too excited about this sort of thing. It's another build. It's getting a little better as I go along. Trying to keep the high voltage wires away from my grounds. I've got a common central ground down here in lug that I've got the actual ground from the power transformer going through. So I'm kind of following the Merlin Blenco suggestions on grounding. it does work. It does things make it a little better. The only thing I'm a little bit concerned at is the input jack. I like to run a safety ground to the sleeve down to the case, so I've got a positive, that way for some reason that if I break the ground tie to the circuit, I've got a positive ground going out to my guitar, or a guitar. I've seen some screwy things happen where miswires have happened, and people get a little energized. Granted, I'm not putting the depth cap in this thing, which does, even though it's in there. I'm not going to get real long-winded about this. It was a good idea back in the day to do it, but it still does send some voltage with some very, very low current along the sleeve, which goes to your guitar strings, and we don't want to do that. So I'm going to probably put a safety ground on this thing just to make darn sure if, that doesn't happen. So, and of course I'll check it out before I plug into it to make sure that it's where it should be, nice and safe. So don't want it to start on fire, don't want to get electrocuted. Those are the two major rules I have when I start building these things. So anyway, that's what it looks like right now. Next segment I should probably have the pots all wired in, and then I'll do a quick plug-in with a load. Well, this is the finished product. I had built the amp, of course. It's only a 5-watt single-ended triode, and then I built this speaker cabinet for it. That's some MDF I had laying around the garage, and a speaker I bought, 10-inch Jensen. Anyway, had the middle of power cable for it too. So that's kind of what that was the end result of my work on this particular project. So like I said, I'm gonna plug into it and gonna burn it in a little bit and see how it sounds. Okay, got this amp all plugged in and it's actually turned on. I checked my voltages across my plates. They're a little high, but I expected that. The actual drawing had called for a 5Y3 GT. I ended up using a 5U4 GB. Similar pinouts. This one has got a little bit more oomph to it, more efficiency, creating DC. So when I went to measure my voltages at certain plates, certain points, in this, for example here, the drawing calls up, I should have 360, I got about 400, 406. So I'm high, I expected that. In fact, it's all across the board. Anywhere I checked DC voltages across my plates, they're a little high, but they're on the 12AX7, they're well within range of what that particular tube can take. I think the drawing calls off a couple hundred volts, 200 here, I got 261, 205, I got 261, so not sure why they're the same, but they should be relatively close. So I knew I was going to be a little bit high because I had a more efficient tube. So I've actually put the thing on the scope, and I got a 3K signal going in and 1 volt output, and so the purple one is my signal generator, and then this is the actual output that I've got going to a speaker. I'm not going to play this too long, but it gets a little loud. I didn't expect for 5 watts this thing was going to get real nasty, and it's got a bit of a buzz to it. I expected that. So all in all, I'm going to probably take this thing up and crank it all the way up and see what kind of wattage I get out of it. I'm getting the output transformer is rated at 5 watts. This thing is basically a 5 watt. So I'm going to shut this off because that is kind of annoying, to say the least. So anyway, that's how it turned out. I'm going to turn it upside down, put the base on, and I got it plugged into the cabinet I built. I got nothing real special. It's got a 10-inch Jensen in there, 4-ohm speaker. You know, again, nothing abnormal. The only thing I can report, I've got to rewire the base. I've got it backwards so that all the way fully clockwise is turning it off and fully counterclockwise turning it on. So, and I remember when I was setting it up, I figured, did I get that right? And I didn't think I did. So, all that said and done, I purposely made that so I could easily. It's like setting up a 3-phase motor the first time you do it. You got a 50-50 chance of getting the rotation right. Well, there's ways you can do it, but without having some good means sorry for the aside, but I knew I had a 50-50 shot of getting that right because I didn't really understand the notation that was on the drawing for that. I do now, and as I realized after I put it together, it's like, I got it backwards. So it's just a matter of pulling a couple wires off and slipping them over, so no big deal. All in all, turn standby off and turn the power off. All in all, successful project. I'll hook it up to the to guitar later on today and strum through a couple of the 2 or 3 chords I know because I'm not a guitarist, and see what it sounds like.